down to that tunnel by myself. But what it did, as we were going down more and more in that tunnel, it sort of shut out all of life. All the world was shut off. And only that flashlight was my life, as it turned out. There. You have a visual memory of that, and that's what I want to share. Another thing that I did that I'm proud of, in my platoon, there were mostly 18 and 19-year-old guys that had, a lot of them hadn't finished high school, a lot of them had in trouble with the law. Most of my sergeants were black. And this was in 1965 in the jungle. And there were a bunch of good old boys. And there was tension in my platoon. There was tension invariably in infantry platoons in Vietnam. My radio operator was this guy from Kentucky or Tennessee. When he left, I assigned as my radio operator a black guy from the inner city of Detroit because I liked him. And he was probably smarter than the rest of them. But for my black sergeants thereafter, they felt enfranchised because with me and my radio operator and my platoon sergeant, we were sort of the commando. Not only that, but in a firefight, when a round came zinging overhead, it was the radio's responsibility to tell the company commander, the battalion commander, what's going on. Because I'm out there trying to figure out what's going on. And Spencer, who was that guy, Gilbert Spencer, and we just exchanged Thanksgiving greeting, was able to carry it on. I had a stronger platoon. I had a good platoon. And it was integrated, and it was purposeful. We had good esprit de corps. And the third thing to mention about my tour is towards the end, was attached to our battalion commander, Haldane, and we were in the Minh Thanh counter-ambush sweep. Minh Thanh Road went up close to Cambodia, and we put a lot of information up about all these supplies it was carrying, anticipating that the North Vietnamese would come across and ambush, and they did. So they brought in enough people to ambush that, but also enough porters to take all that stuff back. And when they hit, we were ready. We had jets that were circling overhead. We had 155s and 105s aimed, and we just loaded up that area on the Cambodian side of the road where the ambush was. And we had our battalion in a matter of minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, we were on the ground. So we swept that area. Now, a soldier perceives combat, and certainly a battlefield, by all senses. It's not just with the eyes. So sometimes that's why it's hard for a soldier to explain what happened, because you bring it on by what you see and what you hear and what you smell, even what you taste, that adrenaline. And it's hard to translate all of those emotions into words. But that was hellish. It was ghoulish. The VC were just piled up. We killed hundreds that day. And as we were nearing the end of our sweep, one of our guys got shot in the stomach. And Haldane told me to take a couple of radio operators and try and make our way back out to where there was a medevac helicopter. But I had to go by myself now with those other guys through that split battlefield. And making my way through, there was a Vietnamese, a North Vietnamese guy trying to take one of his buddies out. Same way. He was trying to get off the battlefield and go in a different direction from me. We didn't make eye contact. It wasn't that close. But I thought it was sort of an enormously meaningful day for me. And it ended in sort of a, I'm not going to get to the evacuation. I ain't going to tell you. You have to read it. Came back from Vietnam. I went to Europe with a black lieutenant, a platoon leader, friend of mine, and we were followed everywhere we went in Europe. In France, people were following us to find out that I Spy had just been on, and people thought we were part of the crew for I Spy. Came back, I was recruited to the CIA. First day was August of 1970. In November of 1971, I was assigned to the Lao program. Let's see, I think I got to see that stud. That's on the boat going over to Vietnam. I was assigned to Laos as a paramilitary case officer. Because of that Geneva Accord that Harriman had done so poorly by us, And you cannot have military. They let the CIA go in and work with some of these local forces. Now, I don't know how much danger that put us in, but we didn't wear any kind of uniform, and it would have been picked up, and our employment by the CIA became known, and it would not have been very nice. But I worked with the Hmong, but we also worked with Lao, the Lao Tongue, and we worked with Thai. We had a force of about 4,000. And in December 1971, I had been there less than a month, but we knew it was coming. There was a task force called Campaign Z of North Vietnamese. 27,000 came down to kill us and take over our headquarters in Long Chin. And we held them all. It took 100 days. Everybody, there's great tape that I've captured from Nixon, from Kissinger talking to Nixon about it's not going to be much longer. They just don't have anybody left. But we held on, thanks to a number of factors, but you got to read the book. But we held on 100 days and they finally gave up. Next year, 73, there was a Laos ceasefire, and I was given orders to Vietnam. And I was anxious to go back. The military had left, the U.S. military had left in 73, and I was anxious to go back, sort of as rear guard on a lot of the people I knew who had died in Vietnam. Because we had been very serious about our endeavors, 65 to 66, and those endeavors had sort of fallen on hard times. The media didn't like it, but it was a bad battlefield. It was bad tactics we used. Nobody stood up and said, that's stupid. Didn't Eisenhower tell you guys anything better to do than try and fight insurgency when you can't tell who is a good guy and who is a bad guy? So we went back home. Now, my wife, Brenda, she was also in the CIA. We adopted our kids in Laos. You can read about that in the book. We went back to, she had been in Dien Chien on the edge of the fighting up north. And that was pretty hellish, ticklish stuff of fighting with the Hmong in Long Chin. And I would stay out 14, 15 days. When there's a break in the fighting, or I could get a helicopter out, I would come down and spend 3 or 4 days with the family, Brenda and the 2 kids, and then we'd fly back. But I was anxious to get back. It wasn't a fearful place as much as it was excited. Our war was sort of glamorous in that we worked with the Asians and fighting other Asians. So when I was going to Vietnam, she and the kids went to Taiwan. They were going to be safe haven at Taiwan. I could get out to see her about every 2 months. They did very well by us early on. They got us into a compound downtown Taiwan. Choice. I mean, these houses had grass, and it was a little colonial place there. Nice, beautiful. Kids didn't like it because they heard there was a morgue down at the end of the street, and there were dead people there at night. And sure enough, there was, at the very end of the street, there was a morgue. So they moved up to the top of Yangmingshan, that big mountain that looks like that. And I went into the station in the embassy in Saigon in January of 74. That's me in Laos. So I went into the embassy in January and was assigned to the Delta. The first place I was assigned was Chao Duc, right there on the Cambodian border. Now my job, I was not a paramilitary advisor. My job was as an intel officer. And I was sending in patrols into Cambodia, which was another, eye-awakening situation, because Cambodians, there was no law. It was a situation. I've been to Afghanistan. I was there in 2010 and 2011, and there are parts of that countryside there is no law. Might makes right. Same in Cambodia, and they had a brutal disregard for life. Your life, especially if you were just a common villager, had no value, zero value. I stayed there for not very long, and I was transferred to Vitat. Trung Tien. The Army has 3 divisions, had 3 divisions in the Delta. The 21st in Vitat, the 7th up there in Vito had the 9th. And the reason I was assigned there is because Joe Hung was the 21st Division commander. And he was known as a friend of the United States. And sometime in the upper branches of the Army, they were not friends of the United States. They had seen our military leave them in '73, leave them on the battlefield. They read the newspapers. They listened to the news at night. I don't know if they saw the news or they got copies of the news, but everybody in the upper reaches of the Ardent Army saw Frank Church and a lot of the other anti-Vietnam, anti-war people speak for the American people on the news. And there was something that you just couldn't go around. CIA, we just didn't go around them because they were volatile and they were really anti-CIA. Hung was different. Hung was a very nice guy. Come on. And you can sort of see that in his manner. His English was not that good. He was sort of slow. He would speak slowly. He understood more than he would speak. But after a few months, he and I developed our own sort of shorthand. And what would take us an hour before, we could get understood between us in 30 minutes or so. And after our meetings, we would sit around and talk about American movies, American sports. And I was the only American in Deton. Terry Barker, which you say was there to begin with, and then it was just me. I'm the only brown guy in Deton. And Hung was my only friend there, really. I would go over and have supper with him every other night or every third night. A great guy. You know, some people have a feel of comfort around them, an aura around them. Hung had that. When I was in Hung's presence, everything was calmer. Everything was nicer. Now, he was a Buddhist, unlike a lot of the senior officers in Arvin who were Catholic. Maybe his religion had something to do with it, but I enjoyed my time with him. And after a period of time, it was not business. It's not business if you enjoy it. And I enjoyed going over to Hung. And I got to know all the people in his outer office, and they sort of gave me carte blanche to go in. Then, in January of 1975, Phuc Bien fell, North Vietnamese coming down. Now, us in the field knew that was a harbinger of bad days ahead. We knew the end of South Vietnam as we knew it was at hand. But among the things the Army did is they transferred Hung to Can Tho. He would be the #2 military Army officer below Saigon. And Jim Delaney, my boss in Can Tho, tried to get in to see him, to get sit reps and that kind of thing. And he was always busy. And his staff outside wouldn't give the American consulate the time of day. So Delaney had me come up from Deton, and I went right in. I got called up the guys that I knew, and they let me in. And then the second time, I went right in when nobody else could get in, not even the conjun. And I would go in and spend time with Hung. Although with the warrant going in, though I wasn't going to, shouldn't turn it into a BS session with him. He had a lot of things to do. So we became good friends, and then Delaney told me to move up from Deton to Can Tho. So my job one became Arvin reported, and a lot of that came from Hung and people that Hung introduced me to. And our military, the intelligence community back in Washington, after Phuc Bien fell, began to change their priority. Suddenly, Arvin, what they could do and couldn't do, was one of the top priorities, rather than political reporting. So my reports from Hung were getting some very good grades. He suggested, Hung did, that for me to get better coverage, because he was on my side. I mean, he really wanted to be helpful. And I told him what I was doing, that we were trying to understand back home what the situation was like so that we can make the best decisions for everybody. He said, go out to the 7th and meet General Hyde. Take a look at that gentleman. That was a mean son of a bitch. Now, whereas Hung was sort of a soft-spoken, nice guy, he must have cussed every once in a while. This guy's English was sharp, and he could cuss like a sailor. I don't know, what are 8, 9 bad words we have in the English language? He could mix those things together and join them together in ways I had never heard before. He called me some names nobody's ever called me, never even imagined before. So when I went out to see, and another interesting thing about high head is a G, you have 10 units, GP small, and GP medium, and GP large. GP large are for squads, GP mediums is what high had. And he had his desk at the end, and he had pallets to his desk. And the strangest thing too, he must have had a doorway. I remember opening the door, but a GP medium doesn't have a door. But anyway, I'd open the door, and he would be sitting at his desk. And he'd look like the soup Nazi from Seinfeld, sitting behind us. And I would have to walk on that pallet walkway up to his desk. Never started smoking. It's just a cloud of smoke. He had lawn furniture off to his side. And I'd sit, and he'd get up and he'd chew my ass. Chew my ass because I represented the United States. Chew my ass because he could speak English that well. Chew my ass because we had nobody was holding us responsible for how poorly we had done this job. That we had messed this job up from one end to the other. He was down, he had the division, but only had about 3 helicopters. But he had a junkyard of helicopters out. They were scavenging parts just to make 2 or 3 of them fly. And he blamed me. And I would take the way he would cut me left and right and up and down, because he had some very good points, very well expressed in a forceful way. And I would take it all on, and then he would sort of run out of steam and we'd talk about the situation. And he was very helpful. Across from him, in Cambodia, because he was right on the Cambodian border, was a sanctuary for the North Vietnamese. And they were building up. It was a staging area. And Hai said, where are your B-52s now? They're in the open. They're out there, not even digging foxholes. They have this border that you establish with your poor management of this war. And they're out there. Well, why don't you do something about it? But they're here to kill me. That's what their job is. I'm sorry. 12 April was a very, well, let me tell you about the woman and children. Glenn Rounceville worked with me in Canton. And one day I was coming in, there was not enough time in the day. You would be up about sunup and you'd get into your quarters before curfew at 8 o'clock in Canton, and it was busy. And it was busy in sort of a way that got you tired at night. I mean, I was a young buck, but still I would go to bed at night tired from all of the people that I dealt with and the situation. There was so much going on. Glenn Rounceville, he knew we had adopted 2 children in Thailand. He called me down into an interview room at the consulate and introduced me to this woman who had 2 children, American Asian children, American Vietnamese children, by 2 different fathers. Now, when the French lost Dinh Dinh Phu in 1954, and they left, the Viet Minh went in and killed all the mixed breed kids. They killed them all. And that was part of the mindset of those women who had cavorted with Americans, and some of them who had children. That the last time the Vietnamese had this opportunity to kill all the kids, she wanted me to adopt her 2 kids to get them out. That she would give them up for adoption. So I called Brenda that night and the next night. And Brenda was, she was understanding, but she said, you have to understand, you have to make her understand that you are not just a means of conveyance to get those kids out of the country. If we adopt them, that's it. We bought those kids. There's no money back on this. There's no kids back as she gets into the States. So I went by and saw her at her house, and I told her I would take her to, if I had to leave, I didn't expect to, but if I had to leave, I'd come by and pick up the 2 kids. So thereafter, when I visited, I only visited 2 or 3 times, but there were 2 little suitcases, 2 little plastic suitcases on the front door. And the kids were great kids. They were just kids. They were just kids. The girl was older, and she was probably wiser. And the little boy, he just looked like somebody from Alabama. Just kids. But I promised I would come by and get this kid. She shouldn't worry. On the 12th of April, some significant things happened. Eagle Pull happened, in which we evacuated the embassy from Phnom Penh. But also, it was a time in Congress when they cut off all support, all war support to South Vietnam. And Frank Church went on the air to talk about finally a good riddance. We've finally gotten rid of this albatross around our neck. We're out of Vietnam. No more money. No more taxpayer monies to the South Vietnamese. And I had to go out and say hi. And the helicopter, one of the reasons I stayed on the, well, because I had this good contact on the night, but also I had worked for 2 years with Air America in Laos. And there at the end, Air America was the only way that you had to get around the country. And they wouldn't just work for anybody, but they would work for me. And I had Cliff Hendricks fly me on the day of 12 April. And he was an Air America guy. There's only one, Izzy Freeman, our neighbor from Illinois, and George Taylor, the only guys I remember working with more than Cliff. And I said, Cliff, don't drop me off and just go hover until I finish. Because we're right next to the Cambodian border when I went up to say hi. I said, land, switch off your engines, land close to General Hai's tent, because I think he might want to kill me. Because I thought he had probably seen Frank Church saying good riddance to South Vietnam. And he was going to hold me accountable. And I went in, same kind of drama, opened the door. He's sitting down at the end of that smoke-filled cloud. I walked in and sat down, and he didn't say anything. But then he got up, and he did have a gun in his side. Maybe he always had a gun in his side, but I wasn't as aware of it as I would say. And I don't think when he stood up, he had made up his mind whether he was going to kill me or not. Because he launched into the most angry commentary on the U.S. handling of things and what our media and our people felt. Obviously, I mean, what he was saying told me obviously he had seen it. He never mentioned Church by name, so he was reading the report.